All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to tackle a pretty weird, maybe even uncomfortable question. When does the pursuit of pure reason start to look, well, a lot like a cult?
So let's just put the question right out there. Can philosophy, the practice of pure reason, actually behave like a cult? I mean, on the surface, that sounds crazy, right? One is all about logic, the other is all about faith. But as you're about to see, that line can get really blurry really fast.
Okay, so to really dig into this, we can't just throw around the word cult like we see in the movies. We need some proper tools to analyze this. So we're going to build ourselves a kind of sociologist's toolkit to take these groups apart and see how they really tick. First thing in our toolkit, getting our terms straight. Sect versus cult. Now, we tend to use these words to mean the same thing, but for sociologists, they're worlds apart. A sect is super exclusive. It's got that us versus them vibe, a ton of strict rules. You're either all in or you're out. A cult, on the other hand, is way more laid back. Think of it like a spiritual flea market. You can wander in, pick up a few beliefs you like, leave others behind. There's no single hardcore dogma. Here's the next build piece of the puzzle. Is the group telling you to run away from the world or to crush it in the world? World-rejecting movements, well, they think the world has totally lost its way. Society is corrupt, and the only way to be saved is to drop out and live by their rules. Then you've got world-affirming movements. These are the complete opposites. They're telling you, hey, you've got all this amazing untapped potential. And guess what? They've got just the technique or the program to help you unlock it, usually for a fee, of course. And this chart just lays it all out so clearly. Look at the goal. Is it salvation from the world or success in the world? The commitment level is totally different too. Are we talking total commitment, like pack your bags and move to the commune? Or is it more of a part-time thing, a tool you use for self-improvement? It all comes down to how they see people. Are we fundamentally broken and sinful, or are we just full of potential that needs to be unlocked? All right, so we've got a way to understand the groups themselves. But what really makes them go? What's the engine driving all of this? Well, that almost always comes down to one thing: the charismatic leader. Now, when we say charisma, we're not just talking about someone who's a smooth talker. The sociologist Max Weber had a much deeper definition. He called it a gift of grace, some special quality that just makes a person seem different, exceptional. Their authority doesn't come from a rule book or a long line of tradition. Nope, it comes purely from the fact that their followers believe they have these incredible, maybe even supernatural powers. And this quote right here, "It is written, but I say unto you," that is the perfect example of charismatic authority in action. It's basically saying, yeah, I know what the old texts say, I know the rules you've been following, but guess what? I'm telling you something new. It's a total game changer, completely overturning the old way of doing things, based on nothing more than that leader's personal say-so. But there's a huge problem with this, right? Charisma is like lightning in a bottle. It's powerful, it's amazing, but it's tied to one person. So what happens when that person is gone? For the movement to survive, they have to somehow capture that lightning and turn it into something stable, an institution with rules and procedures. And that creates this massive tension between the wild, spontaneous energy of the leader and the boring, predictable needs of an organization. So how does a leader deal with this? Well, according to sociologist Roy Wallace, they've got four main options. They can just go with the flow and accept the new structure. They can encourage it, trying to shape it to lock in their own power. Sometimes they get pushed aside by the very managers they hired and they don't even see it coming. Or, and this one is wild, they can fight it tooth and nail. They'll keep changing the teachings, shaking things up, just to make sure everyone's loyalty stays with them personally and not with some new set of rules. Okay, our sociologist's toolkit is packed and ready to go. We know how to define the groups, we know about the leaders, so now let's use it. And we're going to point this powerful lens at a subject that might seem totally out of left field: the famous philosophical schools of ancient Greece. Plato, Aristotle, yeah, those guys. So, let's see. Do these schools fit the bill? Let's run down the checklist. Did they live, eat, and dress together? Check. Did they have to memorize the master's teachings verbatim? Yep. Did they do ascetic exercises, meditation, things to prepare for death? Absolutely. Some were even tested by being humiliated in public. This is starting to sound an awful lot like that exclusive, high-demand, sect-like culture we were just talking about, isn't it?
I mean, listen, to this quote from one of Epicurus's followers, "We shall obey Epicurus, whose way of life we have chosen." That is not the sound of a casual book club. That's a vow. It's a pledge of obedience. They aren't just agreeing with some cool ideas. There's signing up for a whole new way of living, all dictated by one guy. And that gets us to the heart of it. How did they actually see their leader? Well, his students called Epicurus a god among men. Just let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about a brilliant professor. We're talking about someone they viewed as divine. That's a whole other level of devotion, way beyond just respecting someone's intellect. So, what happened after these larger-than-life founders were gone? Well, it's exactly what our sociological toolkit predicted would happen. That problem of institutionalization hit them hard. Suddenly, they had to figure out who was in charge. Plato left his academy to his nephew. Aristotle's handpicked successor got rejected, which led to a bunch of infighting. And slowly but surely, that freewheeling, open debate that started everything, it hardened. It became about interpreting the master's words as if they were holy scripture, not about having new ideas.
So we've taken our toolkit, we've applied it to these ancient philosophers, which brings us all the way back to our big question. What's the final verdict?
Well, like a lot of things in life, it's not a simple yes or no. They don't perfectly match our modern definitions. But, and this is a big but, it's impossible to ignore that these schools had strong sect-like features. You had that exclusivity, that high-demand commitment, and it was all built around this incredibly charismatic leader. And really, that's the key thing to take away from all of this. Today, we think of philosophy as a class you take or a book you read. It's an academic subject. But for the ancients? No way. It was a complete way of life. Being a philosopher meant changing how you ate, how you dressed, how you talked, how you lived, every single moment of your day, all based on the teachings of your master. So that leaves us with one final and maybe pretty challenging thought. This whole toolkit we've been using, it's not just for digging up ancient history. Where do you see these exact same patterns today? What modern groups, whether it's in the wellness world or in tech or even politics, are demanding more than just your agreement? What groups are asking for a total, all-in way of life? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us.